What's up? I'm Proppa, here with another DKO video. Someone requested in a recent YouTube video of mine related to DKO that they wanted to see a god tier list from me. So I'm going to present to you my super official, 100% correct, not subjective at all tier list. I'm kidding, it's super subjective. You know, I don't go through too many technicalities, so I'm going to base it off my experience and my thoughts. So don't take it as fact, just take it as an sort of informed opinion that you probably won't agree with, but hey, that's it. That's the world. These lists are always subjective. There's no such thing as a perfect list. This is all subjective. Okay, so here we go. Let me just get it up real quick. And voila, here we are. So we are going to start. We have top tier, we have above average, average, below average, and nerfed. Now I'm thinking about actually making a couple of tier lists, and I'll make individual videos based off different criteria, but we're going to do with the basic, just what characters I think are the best. And let's go right in a row. Start with Amaterasu. I'm so bad with the names. Definitely top tier. She's super powerful. You can really chain her light attacks. Basically, you can keep people in the air. And like apparently I've read from other people, like if they're at like 50-60% damage, you can basically knock them out with no resistance whatsoever. Do I know how to do that? No, but I think from my playing experience, she's also just really strong because of her quickness and her ability to get away from a lot of ults and abilities. And the fact that she's super easy to learn and use. If you've watched my best beginning characters video, you'll know why. And that's why I have her as top tier. And this is before you really get into the talent system, which I call the perk system. So even before you start messing around with that, she's pretty powerful. So that's why she's my first top tier character. Oh man, so Athena is tough. I really like Athena in duels. 1v1s. I started messing around with duels a little. And I think she's really strong in duels, but she loses some of her strength and usability once you hit arcade 3v3, which the majority of players are going to be playing. More my player base as well, the more casual. I like duels just because it's a little different dynamic, but I'm not super technical with it. So, oh man, I'm going to put her above average. I think she's very average in 3 vs 3 in the arcade mode. But I think she's between above average top tier in 1v1 duels. Especially because of her parry ability and the fact that you can get some reach with her attacks, but if you parry on Amaterasu and then you start hitting with lights, you can put Amaterasu in quite the hole, corner her quite easily at times. So that's why I consider above average, because of her utility and her use of strengths in duels and 1v1s. But keep in mind that she loses some of that in the chaos of 3v3. Because parry has a cooldown, so you're going to use it once, and unless they're unaware of the enemy, they're going to be on the lookout for your parry and try to avoid it, and they have the ability to do so, or have someone bait you to use it on one of their lesser abilities, so then they can use one of their unique ability with far better utility, that sort of thing. Next, we have Hercules. I'm debating between average and below average. I'm going to say average. There's nothing outstanding about Hercules, but there's nothing crazy weak other than his slow speed. But he's a heavy character, so what do you expect? He's also pretty easy to use, easy to learn, so that's why I have him average. He does have his E boulder throw, his projectile, which I think is pretty strong. You can really guide it. It's a little slow, but it has a good enough radius to hit people in the air when they're trying to recover back to the stage. His dash, his charge is pretty good, especially for unsuspecting enemies. Of course, his heavy attack, especially charged heavy, packs a punch. The problem is he's not as good, I think, in duels. He thrives under chaos, where if he's not being targeted by a faster character like Amaterasu or even Susano. is where he thrives. So he can get his heavy hits in and use his dash to great effect. But when you can start focusing on him, he's a little less effective. He's still pretty effective in 2v2 depending on his teammate. So I think he's a very clearly average character. Doesn't have very strong strengths, but doesn't have a really weak weaknesses. So your average Joe, so to speak. Izanami. Oh, God. What's her name? Izanami? I know I'm missing something. I just call her Iza. If you notice my videos, I don't remember the names always, so I just like the ones that are harder for me to remember. I just cut them off and give them nicknames. Iza. I'm going to say she is below average, and I know people disagree with me. I've seen people talk how good she is. The reason why, and I've heard like from some friends that she's pretty good in duels, but I just think she's not the fastest character. She is fast. She's a light character, but I think she loses out against Amaterasu, especially in 1v1s in terms of light attacks. It's interesting because she can bring people towards her, so that is a point you got to take in contention of like a strength where she uses her her E and her projectile. Her E doesn't go and shoot out. It shoots out, but it brings people towards her. So if they're trying to escape and they're like high damage taken and you want to finish them off, it's great to pull them back in to be able to do one of your finishers, whether it's her unique ability, which is just like a berserker, like just rapidly using her double slice to just smash an opponent, or using a heavy when they come towards you. She's good at escapability with her leap ability because it makes her disappear, so you can really move around undetected, which is a strength. But I feel like her ult is very limited. I've used it a couple times. I played her a couple times. It's not a great ult, I don't think. It's nice when she gets them, captures enemies under fear, because then it's easy to knock them out. But I find it's very conditional, based off her teammates and working in conjunction with her teammates rather than a very good solo ult that she can use. Some people might disagree, but that's just my thoughts. So I think she's below average because she's not the fastest. She's going to lose out on some of those light attack battles with some of the other characters. Her projectile brings people in with the strength, but I personally like it to throw enemies away or keep them from getting back to the ledge. I find her unique ability is pretty good, but I find her ult a little underwhelming unless you're teaming up with people. Maybe in duels if you can capture someone, but there's a little delay in it. Like she's going to stop moving. Like when I've used it, maybe it's my utility of it, but I found it hard to capture people under fear. So if you're good at it, then maybe she can go higher in your tier list, but for mine, she's going to be below average. Next, we have King Arthur. I think he's another average character. I think he has some really good abilities. His stun, especially, which is his unique ability, doesn't have crazy cooldowns, so it's one of the stronger unique abilities. And then you can do a charged heavy hit, which makes him really strong. And he has a really good air knockdown. So when you're in the air and then you hit right click to hit them towards the ground, it's one of the stronger ones. But his Q increases mobility, which is nice, but I'd rather it be like Thor's Q where you stun someone. His utilities are really useful when you're in a arcade mode in conjunction with your teammates, and so I consider more of a support character, and I can't consider support characters top tier or above average based off principle, where he is a little more well-rounded as a support character, I think, but as support characters, I just don't think they can carry typically. You have some really good players who can take a character and carry, but for the average player, it's going to be a lot harder to do with him, which prevents him from being top tier. So that's sort of my reasoning behind King Arthur, and I know people are going to argue with me about that, but a lot of my thoughts are based off my personal experiences or how I think the average player will be playing them and how easy it is for them to master them and carry a team. It's very easy for most players to carry with Amaterasu. Athena's a little harder in 3v3, but her utilities shine more once you do 2v2 or 1v1, so that's why she's above average, as I noted. Saul, I want to say Saul is below average. And that's because of the long cooldowns for her abilities, coupled with the fact she's just not that fast and she loses out some of those other light characters. Even Susano, definitely Amaterasu. She loses those clashes. They get their abilities so much quicker back from cooldown, those movements that really take them across the stage. Unlike Souls, she just doesn't really have it. She doesn't have that oomph in that regard. Her projectiles, the Ember, does the fire pit, which is decent, but you can only throw on the ground. It burns them, but it's very light damage. You can use it to ledge guard, but it's not a powerful projectile. It doesn't do too much. It's very limited because you got to hit it on the ground. And the low damage really hurts, so it's sort of useless. Her dash is pretty good. I like it because it becomes a little like cannonball. Her ult is pretty strong, but she does a voice line. You can see the outline. So if you have a dash or your Q ability, your mobility ability, you can usually escape it. So that's one of the issues. So it makes her a lot weaker in one-on-one, especially against some of these other light characters, even medium characters, just partially because of her cooldowns and abilities just are not that powerful on their own. Next we have Susano. He's very top tier right now. He's very broken at the time of this video. One is you get certain talents or his perks, and he can basically just continue attacking someone until they get knocked out. So that's a major reason why. He's pretty fast, but he packs a little punch with his heavy attack. He's not as fast as Amaterasu, but he's still on the light side, but he does a lot more damage, especially if you look at his perks, the talent tree or whatever. You play around with those, he can become very, very good in damage dealing. But as I said, he's fast enough, keep up with the fast characters, and he has enough movement stuff to get out of situations, but also close the distance with other characters. But a lot of people, if you've been listening to Discord, reading, watching gameplay, they complain about Susano because he's just so good. And he's a little hard to learn, but I think average player can learn him well enough to do pretty well with him. Every time I play with him, I usually go 1.0 KD. Some of the characters I don't do that, but Susano I can, even on a rough match. So that's why I would consider him top tier with Amaterasu. Oh, all right. I don't really play Thanatos. I haven't played him once. He's I want to say he's average to below average, but I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt of average because some of his abilities, like his Q, gives him some damage, but then some of his other abilities give him health. So it's a mixed bag, but his ult takes damage away from him and applies that damage to the character he's ulting on. So he's really good survivability. And he's still pretty fast, and he has his unique ability is like a huge sight that he hits out. So I give him average based off the fact that he can survive. So he's got good movements and makes him a little annoying in 1v1s, especially if he ults, because he can lower his vulnerability, his damage percentage, which is huge in those duels. And he's fast enough, and he can right now, they haven't gotten rid of the cancel Q, so they float in the air. But his just mobility gives him an edge when his individual abilities are not necessarily that strong. His regular attacks aren't crazy noteworthy, but he can survive on his own, I think. Now, I'm not as familiar with him, so maybe my opinion will change down the road once I play him more and see him in action more. Because not that many people play him, but he can be very annoying to play against. So that's why I consider him average. But I've seen only a couple people really carry with him, and other times I've seen people just fall flat on their face. So that's why I'm going to give him an average. Because I'm not sure he's an easy character to learn and excel at, but we'll see. We'll go with Thor. He's nerfed. He's completely nerfed. He's so weak right now. And I mained Thor earlier in the alpha. So I like to think I know. But when I fight with him now, I just find that his attacks, whether it's heavy or light, they either clash with other characters when they do the same move. they're light or heavy, or his attacks get interrupted. Um, his strongest move is his projectile, his E ability, because of the lightning radius it creates in the air, so it hits people off and keeps people off, getting back and recovering, getting to the ledge. But his R, which he just like swings in circles 3 times, is very weak. It's very easily interrupted or canceled, and it's super annoying because it's hard to use. Like if you try to use it right at the start and he's about to start swinging, he can get interrupted immediately, so it can't be used. If you do it too far, long in advance, they can easily dodge it, or certain characters like Amaterasu can still. I think it was Amaterasu can still cancel it. Like they can interrupt it. Obviously, Athena can parry it, but that's go figure with her unique ability of parry. But that's why, because his R was his supreme, his unique ability is just so useless right now. His light attacks don't match up with other light characters. I consider medium characters, so you can't really use lights that well, especially against Amaterasu or Thanatos or or Susano. His heavies have about the same speed. I don't know. I haven't really looked at speeds, but it doesn't give him much advantage over Hercules or Ymir, even though they have heavier. You'd think his heavy would be a little faster, but I find they clash a lot when I use it against a Herc or a Ymir. And his ult is okay, but it's actually not great. So he slams the Jorner, his hammer, on the ground, and it shoots like Earth up. So if it doesn't hit an enemy, it becomes an obstacle for your team and the other team. So if you're trying to hunt someone down after and they're like, oh, I almost got them, well, it's hard to jump over the mound of Earth that's come up. So I think like you sometimes, if you hit F early enough and close enough to an enemy, it's great, but like it can be used strategically, but I find it's more of a hindrance than a advantage in those situations. Maybe for coin blitz, but otherwise no. I haven't used him in duels, so I can't really comment on that. But he just seems super weak, and people I've talked to as well think he's gotten a lot worse since earlier in the alpha. And now we're finally on our last character, Ymir. I think he's above average. I think he's much better than Hercules. He's better skill set. For one, he can ground pound, so he's in the air. He can spike down, which is a pretty useful ability. His E, which is his snow breath, if you can get someone, it slows them, and if you can really get them for almost the entire ability, they go and become a cube of ice, which makes an easy charged heavy attack, make them go flying. What I really like is you can really edge guard with it too. Edge guard with his heavy attack, even when they're not coming in the air, he'll slam down, and if they're still in the air, if they're close enough, he'll still project them out. What else? His wall can be useful, especially when you're trying to guard off an enemy or block something off or an objective. So it has some utility. I've seen some use it to block a health item in duels and then jump on top so they can easily ground spike on an enemy from there. So definitely some ability. His ult is pretty good as long as you're good at aiming with a snowball. It's a little unwieldy, and it's still pretty easy to dodge if characters have their dodge in their queue. So it's not the strongest ult, but it's alright. But I just think his heavy attacks are strong enough, and he just had such a variety of, like, if he jumps and does light, he'll like belly hit you. And then the spike. So I just think like just his basic stuff makes him a lot stronger than a lot of the other characters. Not to mention his abilities, which are a mixed bag. His wall is, I would say, weaker. His ice breath is sort of weak because if they zoom by you, you have to have fast enough mouse or your controller to really keep it on them. But his ult, coupled with his heavy attacks, just make up for that. So this is my first attempt at a tier list for DKO, just in terms of overall ability. As you see, it's partially based off my experiences and what I think the average player can do with them. Are they easy for an average player or newer player to do well with them? Or are they not? That sort of thing. So we end up with the one being nerfed is definitely Thor. We're hoping he'll get buffed next update. Below average is Isa and Soul right now. Average, we got Hercules, King Arthur, and Thanatos. Above average, we have Ymir, which talked about, and Athena. The Athena, I think, could definitely become top tier depending on the next update. Top tier, we have Susano and Amaterasu. So, and I think a lot of people would agree with at least Amaterasu and Susano being top tier. In fact, I've seen a lot of talk about that in the Discords right now. So, but I'm hoping after update, Susano will actually be nerfed a bit, maybe Amaterasu. I'm not sure about her. So it'll be interesting to see how this tier list changes in the future. Thank you so much. I'm sure you all have complaints with it, which is fine. But remember, all lists are subjective and they're ever changing. But I'll be sure to do some more in the future with different objectives in mind, not just like tier lists in terms of best characters. Maybe it's like easiest characters, hardest characters, best heavy attacks, best abilities. We'll see. I might roll with it for some more tier lists. But thank you so much for the suggestion for it, and I'm glad to be of service. So I hope you enjoyed, and if you didn't, I'm sorry. You can make your own tier list, make your own video, and we can compare notes. So anyway, thanks, and until next time, I will bid you adieu.